Have one more minute. Wait for her to come on. There she answered. She was trying to get on right now. So, Russo. Hi.
Hello.
I don't know what happened with Deb. She was just coming on, so. Well, why don't you call the meeting to order? We have a quorum, and when she comes on, you can call her out and roll call.
All right, so welcome to the 6th Regional Planning Board meeting being held this Tuesday on August 26th. Calling the meeting to order at 6:36. We have a couple of presentations, so we're going to be jumping right into the business. Just want to let you know that meeting is being recorded. If there's any technical problems, we will make every effort to address them. If we're not able to, we'll have to postpone the meeting and reschedule it. We do have a quorum. So we have, let's go right around. Alan Genevieve is present, Craig Snedeker,
Here.
Karen O'Neill, and
Here. You can open it.
And Deb Potay.
Yep, sorry.
Thanks. And Steve.
I'm here.
Victor and Dorinda.
Here.
Pat.
Here.
Thank you, Pat. And Michelle.
Here.
And Bill. And Bill is having technical issues, so
I'm here.
is,
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. If that helped for streaming, yeah, that's good. All right, so we're going to move right along in this meeting. We have two presentations. They're really extremely important, and they'll help us to move our initiative forward. We have Jake Elberwein, who is going to go through a slide deck of presentations that we'll be presenting to town officials, have on our website, and also have a shorter version on the website as well for people who want a thumbnail sketch of what's going on. And as soon as we do that and make some decisions, we will then move to, you'll notice that Mac Reed is with us, and we have Jay Barry. And so as soon as this is over, they will come on and we will go through the regional agreement. So that said, let's hop in. Someone's playing some great music in the background, but it's probably not going to help on the presentation. Thank you, whoever that was. Unless that was part of the motivation to get us started. So Jake, let's turn it over to you right away.
Sure, thank you. It's good to see all of you. Appreciate the opportunity to help you shape your message. In the chat, I just put a link to a document, which is a PDF version of the slide deck with the script. So the script I've created over the last couple of days. So most of you have not seen the script, so I just wanted you to have access to that. I would encourage you as we work through the slides and you have a chance after this meeting to look at the slides and review them, that as a group, you probably will want to make it your own. I'm assuming that some of you will be delivering this presentation. And so even though the script is there, I'm expecting that you would use that as a foundation, but again, make it your own. I'm going to share my screen with you and just yell out if you can't see or hear, or you want me to repeat anything or stop or answer a question. When I go into slide deck mode, I won't be able to see you because I have two screens and it'll give me my notes on one and the deck on the other. So just interrupt me if you need to. Right now, I'm not in slide mode. I'm just showing you the slide deck. And the slide deck is composed right now of around, I don't know, 56 or so slides. It's 60 long right now, but there's 3 or 4 in there. They're just placeholders. And then if you back out, kind of your section cover slides, which you can just whip through, you're probably closer to 50 slides total. The slide deck is organized into these sections that you can see on the screen right now. You've got a quick intro, talk about the purpose of your group and what pressures you're facing, what problems you're trying to solve. the process you went through, what your recommendation is, why you reached that recommendation, and what's going to happen next. As we go through the slide deck, I would encourage you, as I did with the subcommittee, just think about the ordering of the slides, the style of the slides, if there's any content or language you want changed. A lot of the slides do have animation because they're pretty text heavy in some cases, and so you use animation to sort of layer in the text or to highlight text. And then the other thing I still think you probably need is to add in local photos. I've got some placeholder photos, but maybe want to add in some of those at some point.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't recognize the word propulsion. Could you explain?
Where are we? Oh, value proposition. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so again, this slide is not a slide, okay? This is just for you all, just for this. This is just a little notes that I had to set up the slide deck. The slide deck starts on the next slide. So this is your first official slide deck. When you start the show, this is where you'll begin. I'm going to go into slide mode. You can see, just so you all have some orientation, each of the slides will have a little bit of a note section down here. This is your script. So depending on who's delivering it, you would in effect just read the script, add in your name, again, make it your own. We will be doing a voiceover once we have this thing settled, which is just basically just someone reading the slides and recording it. And then that could be put on the website, so someone could just hit play and it would work its way through the slide deck. If you go into your community to do presentations, I think that can be very impactful to be in person with your stakeholders. And so for some of you folks who are doing it in the towns in which you reside, that you're representing, I think that hopefully this script will help a bit. All right, so here we go. So we're going to skip over the first slide. So this is your first slide. You're welcome. Not really much to it. Each of the sections is divided by a big slide that looks like this. Introduction, we've got some comments. I'm not going to read the comments unless you want me to, Alan. But basically, you have a slide which is going to talk about your goals for the day, which basically is to identify why you launch a study, what's being recommended, and what's going to come next. I would really encourage you in the slide deck, if it's being offered live, that you have some sort of feedback mechanism. In Mohawk Trail and in South County, we had various tools, either online where people could put their input into an online system. We use 3x5 cards in some places where people literally wrote their questions down. If you're doing it asynchronously online, so people are just doing the feedback or the playback, then you probably want a link where they can drop comments or questions so you can make sure you respond to them. As you all know, no one wants to be talked to. They want to have a conversation with you all, so providing the opportunity for them to provide feedback is going to be important. You'll see how the animations come in, and you can layer the animations. When you go through the script, I have a little asterisk, which when you hit an asterisk, you just click the advanced button and the next animation goes. That'll all be automated again in the one which is recorded, but basically there were 4 areas I just wanted to reinforce. You've done a lot of study, you've got a lot of resources, meaning that this presentation is not going to capture all the work that you did. So I encourage people to go look at your resources on your website, reinforcing that that the decision really is ultimately theirs, which will be made on the town floor, and continue to focus on the thesis that this is really all about students and ensuring best possible education for your kids. This is just your setup slide for your feedback. This slide can be customized depending on how you want to do feedback. You want to do have people drop comments in the chat. You want to do 3x5 cards, you can change this slide. So easy peasy. I always direct people to the website pretty quickly in presentations. And normally we put the presentation on the website. So if people want to follow along, just like I did with you all today, I put the link into the chat. If you wanted to follow along, you could open the link, have that opened at the same time that you're participating. So this is just a slide, a screenshot of your website, your reports. And again, if you have a link directly to the presentation, you might want to add that. I decided to basically start with the end in mind, which is getting people right to your recommendation and then sort of backing into how you got there. Your recommendation, basically, as you all know, is to take 3 school districts. 2 are regional, one's an individual town district. I put the enrollment numbers as they stand as they stood in the current school year. And then your animations that the 3 districts be combined into a single district that you all have named the Great River Regional School District. I think I got that right, composed of 1,400 and a little under 1,500 kids. We had the idea that this really ultimately is about elevating opportunities for your students, uniting your programming, and really ensuring that your kids have the best possible education. So the focus on the presentation, as I heard from you all in sort of the planning meetings, was that you really wanted to talk about the student experience. Certainly the financial aspect is a piece of it, but this is really really what you're leading off with and what is emphasized pretty intensely throughout the presentation. Again, reminding people that their voice matters. You're really trying to get people to obviously pay attention and certainly agree with your position, your recommendation, but ultimately reminding them that they have the power, that this will be decided on the town floor. So from here, I sort of said, we're going to back up and sort of explain how we got to the recommendation. Again, this is all scripted out. We moved to purpose and pressure. You have one slide which talks about the charge. Again, the animations will come in based on your timing. Again, focus on creating a sustainable educational future, more opportunities for kids, but also reflecting the fiscal realities of your 6 towns. And that's really where we begin to layer in that fiscal piece in a very sort of introductory way. Again, reminding people this is really all about the students. Again, the overarching question is, why is there a need for change? And we really emphasize the idea, again, I heard this in the planning meetings, that this is really about a decline in student enrollment. So from here, we go into the issue of student enrollment. I have a couple of slides that illustrate this. This is the first one. This is your change from somewhere around 98, 99. I know, Greg, you asked me to add a year. I could probably do that. I haven't yet, but I did change the colors to keep them consistent. But you can see your trajectory here. Your overall enrollment with the 2 districts combined is about a 50% decline over this time period. Then I have specific information about the 2 districts where the Gill Montague district declined by 47%, Pioneer by 56%. But just giving people some snapshots of your enrollment, really to emphasize how steep the decline has been since the very late 90s. Okay, got a couple more enrollment slides. This enrollment slide, and again, I want to point out that some of the slides are pretty text heavy and they're data heavy. And when you're giving the presentation, you don't read everything. You're just hitting some highlights. But what you're also providing to people is a resource that they can go back to and look at after the fact. So while this has a lot of information on it, you're not going to read it all. But this basically is organized into 3 buckets, the 3 districts, with each school listed under each district. And then reminding folks that you've got a couple of schools that have closed since 98. And then one school that became an independent. Do I have that right? Is that 2020?
No.
No.
People are
What?
leaving. I'm sure. Oh dear. Yeah.
Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, I didn't hear yes or no on that, but
For what was that again? For the
the question is, did Warwick become a standalone in 2020? Is that the right year?
I think it was 2022.
Okay, all right.
Make
Hey,
sure.
I have a question too. In the number of change column, schools that were closed didn't mean overall enrollment was closed, went down. They went to other school.
No, I understand that. Yeah, so they're incorporated in the other schools, but so your total enrollment up here on the total district will include those students. It's just reminding people that you had schools at one point that were operational, which are not now. And if you were to go back to 98 and list your schools and not have Pearl Roads or Montague Center, you wouldn't have those numbers there. So it's just a way to show that those schools were operational then, but are not now.
Yeah, and I
Oh.
don't know, Jake, I don't know how, I was at a retreat today. So Warwick now has 54 students. So went from 27 to 54. We
Okay.
opened up school choice and that's going to jump up again. So
Yep.
I'll have to think about that because it's a bigger number than what it was
Yeah.
in 24, 25.
Yeah, fair enough. So we get into this debate all the time, and I've had it happen in both districts, which is which numbers do you use? And so I've been pretty consistent, but I'll certainly take my cues from you all that we use the latest October 1 report. So this would be your 24-25 data as of October 1, 2024, as certified by the Department of Education. In Mohawk Trail, we decided to update that based on reported numbers, and so we did change that. So that's certainly an option for you all to think about. Okay.
So Jake, and this is in-seat enrollment, right? Because Warwick, if you look at the foundation budget, it's a lot more than that. So this is in-seat enrollment in the district. Is that the numbers you're using?
Yeah, this is your head count.
Okay, good. Thank you.
This is not foundation enrollment.
Yeah, thanks.
There's nothing in this presentation on foundation enrollment. I mean, that would certainly impact your financial
Right.
picture. I don't get that far down the rabbit hole with finances, but
Yeah,
this is your head count, how many
Thank
kids you
you.
have. It doesn't even really differentiate whether the kids are residents or choice. This is just your total numbers.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. You're
Okay,
welcome.
this is Karen. I want to go back to the number change,
Which one?
the column of number change.
Number change, percent change?
I know, well, both of them actually, but let's look at numbers changed.
Yep.
You have a total of a loss of 307 students for Pioneer. That means you're counting the ones from Pearl Roads, and they haven't been added to Bernardston, which is where those students went.
I think
Okay.
you just see it in the number change because that's only a 5 student change as opposed to everything else, which has a bigger drop.
All right.
I know it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah,
It's just,
five-
yeah, it's just a
the
move.
307 is just the 7 through 12.
I mean, we might not need the number change column at all, basically.
Yeah, you can get rid of both columns. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't feel like that's necessary, you can just show the total numbers in 98, 99, and 24, 25.
I
It
think
just,
percent change is fine. It's just like overall.
Sure.
well,
Okay.
well, you have the same problem then if you count the 100% loss from Pearl Roads and you haven't added that back into Bernardston.
Well,
It's
yeah,
You could just write NA or
Yeah,
something like that.
and to
Like,
be, Karen, the
NA.
Pearl Rose was down in the 20s by the time it got closed. So, you're not going to add back 101. It started at 101.
Right.
Closed, it was in the 20s.
But I'm questioning, I guess, comparing numbers from 6 or 7 years apart that don't reflect what happened in Bernardston.
I
So-
think maybe we could fix this
Yeah,
by
we
just
can- I-
having
I
an
can work-
overall percent change
I
at the
can work
bottom.
with, I can work with Jake with the numbers. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
'Cause that's all we really want to know anyway, is the overall percent change that, hey, we lost half the kids.
Yeah,
Well, they
y'all-
grew up.
Y'all also may just decide that having the school level data is not important. I mean, it may not matter. So I only put this in as another way to think about enrollment. Any of these slides can be changed or even eliminated if you think it's just too much. This slide prior may do it for you. That may be it. So.
Right.
Um,
Well, one thing that I did, and I can send you some of those numbers, but it's not a big change. It's just to take the peak of, the elementary schools when they peak, because now the districts peaked back in 96, but like the high school and Pioneer peaked in 2012. at 343, and now it's down at like 107. So, I mean, those kind of dramatic declines are pretty, glaring. But anyway, we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, and I'd like the suggestion of, since we have that previous slide, I'll just throw my 2 cents that we could eliminate the change in the percent, because down below you could just have an overall or something like that.
Yeah, it's easy. We can get rid of these 2 columns. So you all just direct me. It's easy peasy for me. It just depends on how you want to represent, the numbers to, I think really what you're trying to, the story you're trying to tell here is that your enrollment's gone down, and it's gone down by district, it's gone down by building.
Right.
I think just having an asterisk explaining that Pearl Road's where it's going, I wouldn't change anything. I would just put a little asterisk explaining. You do not want to make it less clear. And to me, you can explain, but to shut something down, no way. I think all that information needs to be out there, as long as you have an asterisk explaining that the students went from Pearl Roads to Bernardston.
Yeah.
Just like you have the asterisk for Warwick
Yep.
at the bottom. You just
Yep.
you just
Very
do that
clear.
explain that those
Yeah.
people went to Bernardston, and still it's down 2.4%. So
It's not misleading.
right.
Okay. And then how about Montague Center? Where'd they go?
They got it.
Hillcrest and Sheffield.
Hillcrest and Sheffield, yeah. And maybe
So-
maybe someone to Gill. Who knows?
So I think sort of
Leverett, actually.
Yeah.
the clear line of where kids went is a little fuzzier on the Gill side, but you think it's fairly solid on the Pioneer side.
Yes. Yes.
It isn't,
And you
it
can put an
isn't
asterisk and
fuzzier on
say-
the Gill side at all. When Montague Center got shut down,
Yeah.
Gill was not, we did not have intra-district choice.
Mhm.
So the kids from Montague did not go to Gill at that time. That's a much later situation. And I think
Okay.
that should be reflected, that this is true. And currently, some of the kids in Gill do come from Montague. Different issue. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just will need direction on what you'd like the asterisks to read. Meaning, I think I'm hearing that Pearl Roads, the asterisk would read, students went to Bernardston, and Montague Center students went somewhere. you all
Asheville and
know it.
Sheffield. Bill, is it correct? Would it be correct, Bill, if it said to Asheville and
To Hillcrest and Sheffield.
yeah,
Yes. Yes.
and that's what we should do then.
And
Okay.
you can say due to under enrollment. I mean, people need to know that there's this ongoing history of schools being shuttered due to not enough students. I think it's best because there are new people in town who have no idea that there was a school in Leiden that doesn't exist. I think it's important because this stuff happened during our 6 years, right? Am I wrong?
No, we think that's a really important lesson in all these regionalization studies, because a lot of folks don't know that they had a lot more schools at one point than they have today. So this has already occurred. They've already closed schools. So anyways, I think it's a good point. One of the things we do when we go into communities is we start with a history. We tell the story of all those. So, all right, I'll get those asterisks in, and you can sort of advise me on whether you want to keep these last 2 columns in, but we'll keep moving. This slide right here is just an illustration of just the high school, grades 9 through 12. And the point here is to show what the high school enrollments were in 98 and 99 as compared to 25, with the punchline being if you combine today's enrollment, it would be around 314, which is less than either of the 2 schools individually were in 98 and 99. And in some ways that sets you all up for your recommendation, which is how you're going to repurpose those 2 buildings as a middle and high school. So this does animate in. Again, it was just one more way to kind of hammer home the point that you have gotten smaller, which gives you options. And then lastly, I have 2 more slides on enrollment. We did, again, maybe too many slides on enrollment, but they're here. This is the last NESDEC report that I pulled from. We often hear when we go into communities that the decline is going to reverse itself and we're going to grow. But that's really not what most of the studies say. Most of the studies say it's flattening out with a much less steep decline, but the decline is still ongoing nonetheless. And that's really driven by, as you all know, birth, deaths, migration in and out, transfers, and often housing. All right.
When you ask the future, can you go back next?
This one?
Yeah, you're predicting 2.5% loss in the next 3 years.
I'm not predicting anything. This is your NATSEC study. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't mean you. Sorry. How do I, the point is, people might say in the Pioneer Valley School District, well, we're getting tuition students that will make that up. What is our answer to that? Because tuition students do not pay for capital costs. And the capital costs are on the towns more and more. If our population of students in our 3 towns decline, but tuition students increases.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I can answer that question, or I should be. That's really for your committee to
Yeah, I mean,
answer.
Michelle, I think there's a couple of things to think about here is that, we really are focusing, we should be focusing on middle and high school, even though this is a 2.5%, this is a 2.5% in the entire district. I mean,
Right.
they've lost Pioneer, if they were at 115, they're down to like 110, a loss of 5 students and that is a much higher, percentage than 2.5. So, I think we need to focus more on the middle and high school because that's where the drop off is. But I mean, you got a good point for sure.
That's only where the tuition students come from, 9
Yeah.
through 12.
Right. Right. But
So,
this is the in seat. So I mean, we're losing.
Okay, so that's what I'm
They're gaining them
saying.
they're gaining them a
need-
little bit in the elementary schools, but you're losing them at a more rapid pace in the high school and middle school.
Yeah, I
so
just think we need to say what is dropping is our resident students, like people who live in our 3 towns.
Mhm.
yeah, that's a very, very good point, because I think the counter argument would be, since Jake got the information, from the in-seat count that we get off the state website, that doesn't include, tuition kids in, because they're not tracked that way. So Pioneer, their comeback could be, well, wait a minute, we don't have 506 students. We actually have, I'll make it up, 600 students, because we have all these other kids that are being tuitioned in. We should be ready to be able to clarify it. And I think you just did perfectly to say we're focused on residents of our towns, student residents of our town.
Yeah. I think that the reason I put this slide in is because we always hear this argument that these districts are somehow going to turn around their enrollment picture. And whether that's, we got families that we worked with North County, we heard, oh, Williams College, all the professors getting old and they're all going to retire, and these young professors are coming in with kids. We got a big employer coming into South County. They're going to bring in all these families and a lot of speculation, but the reality is your projections are not really bearing that out. The next slide is about choice. That's not tuition, it's choice. And this is a kind of a busy slide. I have a script that goes with it, but it shows for each of your 2 districts, your choice tendencies. And as you can see on Pioneer side, you've had really a reversal, which is historically you were receiving a lot more students than you were sending out in choice. This past year was really the first year in which you sent more kids out than you received. Gil Montague has always been a sending district versus receiving, but that is actually tapered down a little bit. So I put little kind of punch here lines here is that really both your districts now are sending more kids out than they're receiving. Now, the tuition arrangement may be a different picture. I didn't really look at that data. If you want to paint a picture around tuition agreements that you have, you know, this is only one form of optional enrollment in the district, the choice program, but I thought it would, I did mention this to the subcommittee, and I think everyone agreed that this wouldn't be a bad idea to share this. Okay, so that's kind of your block of enrollment slides, and I think you have to ask yourself the question: are you telling a compelling enough story? Because you're making this argument that enrollment is your driving variable in all of this. All right, so I put a little slide in here, and I think it's important because sometimes when we talk to towns or communities, they think that we're picking on them. This is their problem and no one else has the same problem. And the reality is lots of folks have the same problem that you all are facing. It only takes a quick scan of headlines in any given week to see that. And so I just put a slide in just to sort of reassure everyone, not that it makes anyone feel any better about the situation, but this is really a situation a lot of rural districts are facing, a lot of northeastern school districts are facing as enrollment declines. All right, so we then move from, given the fact that you have this presenting problem of enrollment decline, it's an issue of enrollment decline, what problem is it that we're trying to solve? I organize the problem into what I refer to as two buckets. It's a money problem and a cohort problem. A money problem relates to how you finance your school districts and the expenses that your school districts and your schools are costing. And the second is on the cohort side, which is the size of students and schools and classes and groups of kids that will enable you to ensure that you're offering a robust set of programs and services to your students. And so really the impact is to three groups. It's to your students, to your staff, and really to your town/residents. So then we get into each of these two buckets to talk a little bit about each of them. The first bucket is a snapshot of your budgets. Again, a very busy slide, but I tend to focus on two things. The first is, and again, this is all scripted out. The first is your orange line, which is your state aid, and those are your orange bars. I create a sort of an average trend line, which in this case is relatively flat, which again underscores the idea that you're not really getting any more state aid. Well, your blue line, which is your top arrow, which is rising, are your operating costs, which are going up. And that distance between state aid and operating is really what your towns have to make up. That's your taxpayers' allocation. And so the problem here that a lot of rural districts and places with declining enrollment are facing is bearing more of the burden on the financial side. We put two slides in which talk a little bit about the sort of the mechanics of how schools are paid for. Again, there's a script for this. You may decide this is too technical, but I basically talk about the operating budget, costs outside the operating budget, capital costs, and I really illustrate what your expense areas are, what your revenue areas are, with a highlight on property tax being a contributor for your local required contribution, for what you contribute beyond required, and for your capital. So you have three areas where you're really property tax are contributing. So as this state bucket down here basically remains flat and these things grow, more liability gets passed to your property tax owners. I can animate this slide. I wasn't sure we're going to keep this slide in. It gets a little bit detailed, but in some of the presentations we've done, people appreciated it because it helps to understand how you get from expenses down to paying for my house, my property taxes. And so, obviously, you're developing an expense budget, you're backing out your revenues, which includes state aid, and then you're raising the difference at the town level. And again, that's appropriated in kind of three buckets: your required local contribution, your above required, and your capital. And all that plays out in your property taxes, your tax rates, and your property values. your tax rate's based on your property values. Tax, you know what I mean? So anyways, you may decide you want that, don't want that. And then the next
But-
slide would just, yep,
But-
please.
Well, I'm just wondering, what are people's feeling on that? Should that be, it's, part of the discussion during the town meeting or I mean, our forums or this, do you think
Well-
this will help?
Well, this is Karen again. I think a lot of people don't understand why we have a higher required minimum contribution in some towns like Leiden than
Mhm.
others. They don't understand the contribution of wealth and what it's based on.
Yeah. That's a good point. And, we don't get into the calculation on a town level. We have in other presentations. I didn't in this one. I just make a reference right here
Mhm.
where your assessment for your required is really based on enrollment and wealth factors. As you know, it's your income and your total property values, which, compile to create sort of an equalized value wealth factor for your community. And we don't get into sort of the whole issue of hold harmless. I know that the Abrahams group is doing a lot of work with you to do your financial. So I was sort of thinking, what's just enough for people to know, to not overwhelm them, not confuse them, but this may be too much,
Hey, Jake, Dorinda has her hand up. Go ahead, Dorinda.
Yeah, I think this is all good. It's just sort of like, is this part of our narrative? And since we're not really forecasted to be saving any money,
Yeah.
how important is it to have all these slides? I think the other slide, showing the difference between the state aid and like the actual costs is really good.
Yeah.
But this, it's like, I don't think, we wouldn't, if we were saving money, maybe we wouldn't be saving money for years and we wouldn't really be saving money unless,
Yeah.
maybe unless buildings were condensed or other factors. I think at this point, we're not, sort of what's the point of talking about it at length if we're not saving any money necessarily?
It could be added to the website as information. I think that might be good.
Agreed.
I
Right, yeah,
agree.
like maybe this is the full presentation and then you don't see all of it at town meeting.
Sure.
Right.
So this slide is the one that we've kept in, and it's the only one we used. In the general presentation, we did create town snapshots for each town to explain what the implications were at the town level. So I think for a generalized presentation, this is probably the right slide. So I'll just keep moving along.
Yeah.
All right, so let's click through all these, and then we move from that. I did put in, a little bit on your town data. This actually came from the request. Somebody sent this as a request, and I put it in here just as the total dollars your town spent on education, what % of their total budget is spent on education, and what your average tax bills were. I had kind of 3 takeaways here, and I can't remember who sent this to me, but I think it's someone on the call. But that you guys are investing more than half of your town budgets on education. There's an increasing liability to pay for schools on the town side. And then the third one was kind of an interesting point, and this is not mine, this is someone else's, who said that, your tax bills are relatively similar. When you look at the average single family tax bill across your towns, which may actually make the path to merger, somewhat easier. We didn't see that, and we don't see that necessarily in the Mohawk Trail project, and we definitely didn't see that in South County. So anyway.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm actually shocked that they're so close.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. So anyways, you can get all this data at MassGov, Division of Local Services, there's tons of stuff. But yeah, anyways. So that ends up sort of the financial, oh, actually I have one more, this is one slide this was pulled out actually out of the Rural Commission. And they just were saying, how smaller schools, rural schools, which tend to be smaller, are just more expensive. And, this slide is actually just poached from them and basically shows that, you basically operate with the same number of staff, but you're not getting as much aid because you don't have as many kids. So anyways, it's kind of interesting that at this point, you may choose to use it or not. Again, if it's not really part of your narrative in terms of if this is really about the educational experience, you may want to trim down those financial slides and not have as many.
How
So
do
then we
people
move-
feel about that one? I don't know if that adds any value. What do other folks think on that one?
I would keep it either on the website only or in the presentation. People are asking a lot of financial questions.
Okay.
I think you're going to have different audiences, and
Yes, I do
clearly,
too.
right? And I know, I've read your stuff, and I know that you guys are not leading with financial savings as your big feature, right? But I think you got a lot of folks who are going to be definitely paying attention to whether this marriage, this merger, this proposal will have any effect on efficiency and long-term sort of fiscal stability. So, in my opinion, it certainly, from the outside, I think you have an argument for that. So anyways, moving on, we move now into the second part of the problem, which is the issue of cohort, which is the number of kids in a school, a grade, a classroom. And I just, again, because I know you're all focused on middle school and high school, I used high school as an example, Turner's and Pioneer. I did the combo just to show how your total 9 through 12 enrollment has declined over the time period. And if you just look at your 9th grade cohort, you've gone from 224 kids to 82 kids combined. And again, you're never going to get to the optimal high school size, which is recommended literature of 600, but you're also not going to be dealing with a graduating class of 20 or less, which I think you're facing in some cases. So, and then we get into what that means. What are the ups and downs of smaller cohorts? This is basically out of the literature more than anything, and these are repeated in the work that you all did and talking to people. And what I do on this slide is it's narrated. Again, you have a narration, but we pull in animations where we just highlight particular features. Things like smaller class sizes on the upside, travel time is optimized. On the downside, your cost per students are higher when your cohorts are smaller, and there's smaller peer cohorts for things like friendships and social networks. So anyways, you may decide to highlight different ones, but I'm just showing you how you can use animation so you're not reading every word on a slide. You're sort of highlighting key things that you just want to emphasize. Again, you need a better photo for that, not something I pulled off the internet. And then this is stuff that came right out of your community outreach work, and things that you all reported you've experienced. And again, you can do some highlighting here. I think I did. Your daily schedule for your high school kids is constricted. I'll make that point in just a minute. And you have more pressure on staff and students to do more. We've heard this pretty consistently in the smaller school districts that, man, it's hard to run our club because we only have 3 kids, and same 5 kids that are in this club over here or in this club over here. It's like, wouldn't it be great if we have a bigger pool of kids to run these things? I tried to put a quote in every one of these slides just to keep it consistent. These are things that came right out of different articles and reports that I was sent. Okay, and then just to illustrate, you put a big list together, but then you hammer home the point. I know the use of the word conceptually was questioned, and we could certainly change that. That was just this is a verbatim quote out of one of your reports. And the idea here is that you may conceptually have on paper in your program of studies lots of classes that you say you offer, things like mock trial and design builder and video classes, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, there really aren't sufficient numbers to actually offer these classes. So it's just kind of hammering home the point that, sure, you may say you do this stuff, but in reality, it doesn't actually play out like that. Okay. So we're kind of setting the stage. This is all out of your community engagement work that you did. And then I just had a series of punchlines, which were things that I can't remember. Was it Broderick was the name of your consultant, right?
Yep,
Help me.
Mary Broderick.
and she did a good job. And these were just some things that she pulled out, things that people were looking for. So before you even, you know, are hammering home your recommendation, you're reflecting what you heard from people. Things like the need for enhanced academics, sports and clubs, more community connection, staff growth, larger pool, things like that. So anyways, this is a list that just sort of hammers it home. And then we jump into a summary of your challenges, just to kind of sum it up, declining enrollment.
Hey, can we just go back to that slide real quick? Just, you might
Yeah.
want to change the staff growth. I mean, I think that teachers feel stretched and isolated when it's down, when staff is shrinking. I think
Yeah, okay.
it's the opposite, is that they feel they have more you know, collaboration and less stress because they have more staff in their department to lean on.
Yeah, and that's actually what it was intended to say. To be
Okay.
honest.
All right.
Greg,
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know if I pulled these headers verbatim out of her report, but the idea was staff need opportunities for growth because they feel
Right.
stretched
Okay,
and
good.
isolated
All right.
in small settings. Okay.
That
Maybe
sounds
I
good.
should say staff need for growth there or something like that, or desire.
Well,
Yeah. Perfect.
yeah, and the reason for that comment, because I remember that, was teachers were feeling that there's so much pressure on them to want to continue to offer things to the kids, so they were, you know, on overdrive to
That's right.
to offer things. So that was the stretch part, but they didn't have other colleagues to lean on, either to help them or to, you know, talk about curriculum with.
So this is your punchline. It sums up all your challenges, and we transition right into really, which is where you're going to, which is the process you all followed. I kept the process in one single slide. Actually, I didn't. I got a couple slides, so you can decide whether you want them all. But this is your board. Basically, when you form, what you're charged with, that you've met, that you've got 3 reps, that you've studied these various things, that you've got lots of resources in your website, blah, blah, blah. This is your membership. I don't know if I'm missing anybody, or I misspelled anything. I think I pulled it off one of your sites, so make sure we have that. And then I talked
Yeah,
about.
you misspelled Leiden.
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, I don't. Oh, that's it. That's right. You see
Oh,
that?
DEN.
Yeah, right. I spelled it right in another place.
Yeah.
So I'm 50% right. I'm batting 500. I'd be an all-star in the major league.
That's when you come from Leiden. You're a Leidone.
You bet.
Good catch, Steve.
Sorry about that. You all will find these, and so certainly feel free. I'm sure there are little corrections in here. So over your 6-year path, which I think that was clarified in one of the email trails that was going around, you studied the current conditions, you listened to your community, you explored a model option, and you reached a preferred recommendation, which is all going to boil down to your regional agreement, which is what you're sending to your towns. Okay, so this is kind of your process summed up in a quick slide. And then I just explained very quickly what a draft regional agreement is, that it will cover how your districts operate, how your towns apportion money to the district, how your school committees are set up, where your kids go to school. So just reminding them that this is actually what they're going to be voting on when it comes to the town floor. I keep reminding everyone that they decide, just keep empowering them with that authority. So then we move into the recommendation.
Jake, before you go on, just make a note that we refer to it as a proposed regional agreement in the way we write and the way we've put it in letters and stuff. So probably instead of having draft, you could fix that to be consistent. Proposed regional agreement.
Those are things I think are really important. So we'll make sure we get that. I don't mean to hang you up, so I'm just going to keep moving here. I can fix those later. Your recommendation. So I have a slide. Remember, we made the recommendation earlier in the presentation, but I just, again, if you want to say by unanimous vote, which I think it was, you are taking your 6 towns, forming a new district, and then you are reorganizing your students into a middle school in Pioneer Valley, into a high school at Turner's, your elementary school. Okay.
Jake,
So
you
all I
might
say for your elementary schools here is that they remain operational. Okay. I have another spot in the presentation which you may want to push back on, and that is that your 6th graders are going to your middle school. anyways, we'll hit that in a second.
Wait,
Actually,
wait.
it's on the next
You-
slide.
Correct the spelling of Leiden on that
Yeah.
previous.
Yeah, I'll get it.
I was just going to say that. You might want to go through all the slides.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you all will go through all the slides too, so you'll
Okay.
find errors and omissions, and I'll fix those. That's fine. We have to rely on the expertise and familiarity that you guys have that I certainly don't. So apologize for that. So after the recommendation slide, I do recap by school. Again, remember earlier in the slide deck, we had the schools listed, so we're coming back to school. Some of your stakeholders will. I'll be honest with you, we find that people don't even know what district they belong to, but they know what school their kid goes to. So it is important, I think, to call out schools because people will want to know, is my school closing? How's it changing? What's going on? So this is where I took a little bit of a leap. I did not talk to anyone, so we may have to change this. But I didn't know, are you moving your sixth grade, all your sixth grades up to your middle school? I kind of assuming you were.
Mhm.
So that's what the slide reflects.
Not
Yep.
necessarily, but that's okay. We can address that later.
Okay, anyways, so we may want to change this, but anyways, I'd put that there, recap by school, and then we get into the value proposition, which is why you're doing this. So I have 3 primary points for your value proposition. And again, I think this is important to organize, you know, they say power of 3s and how you talk to people, right? This is your power of 3s: increased educational opportunities, larger cohorts, both students and professionals, and then 3 long-term efficiencies and sustainability for your towns. Those are the 3 points. So then I take each of these 3 and I unpack it in a slide. So we put it at the top, and then we create kind of a checklist of things. These came out of work that you all have produced, articles written, reports written. We do some highlighting. They all have a quote. This one is from Mars on one of their initial reports in which they talked about the challenges of not having a lot of numbers. And then we can do some highlighting if you choose to as you go through your talking point. So one on your educational opportunities and services. Your next slide is on your larger cohorts. Again, the focus here, this actually Deb, we pulled a quote from an article she wrote about the social connections, and then we highlighted expanded peer networks and a dedicated middle school model. Again, you may decide to highlight different things as your points of emphasis. And then your third area is efficiencies, long-term stability for your taxpayers. I did say modest savings through consolidation. I pulled out a quote from one of your community surveys, and then I highlighted things like economies of scale. I did actually call this out, and I'm wondering how y'all feel about this, but no need for a costly capital construction renovation project, which is something which is on the Pioneer agenda, right? So I didn't know if you wanted to just push right back into that. Your proposal does not require that. The Pioneer proposal does. So that to me is kind of a big deal. But you'll have to decide, you know, politically on how you want to sort of, you know, push into that question.
Well, this is Karen from the Pioneer District School Committee of the recent past. It's going to require a lot of capital invested in the 2 remaining elementary schools, whereas the proposed construction would incorporate those schools.
Gotcha.
So,
But Karen, there's also enough room right now to put the 2 elementary schools in Pioneer.
I don't think anybody wants all of those students
No,
together.
I know. But
So,
And since you brought the subject, I want to just hear Bill's take on this. Bill, I know that I think the Gil-Montagu district is also looking at something here. What are your thoughts of should this be in or not? Because there might be something in the works there as well.
I think the biggest thing to avoid is item number 1, modest savings through consolidation, because you're always going to run into the argument or the experience that every year school budgets seem to increase historically, and how are you going to guarantee that there are any savings at all? In fact, it's an educational experience, and to provide the best education, which we always try to do, generally takes a little bit more money than what the towns are willing to spend. So every year there is a battle of trying to get as much as of a budget, and it's not a bad battle, it's a good battle. Just trying to get in line with what the towns can afford. And I think that's where I would not give a number for a savings, because we've already stated, in fact, that we would realize maybe a $400,000 savings on the administrative level, but that didn't necessarily mean that money was going to be a savings. It would be redirected. So I wouldn't bring it up.
Yeah, you got a good point. And
I
particularly,
also, Alan, I would just say, you know, what was very successful in my meeting with the three towns, the leaders, was just bringing up the idea of bang for the buck. I mean, really, that's what economies of scale is.
Yeah.
And on the financial side, it's like, you know, you're not going to pay, let's say, more, but you're going to get a lot more for what you're paying for.
Mhm. Okay.
so let's work at rewording that one. And Bill, what about the school that you're looking at maybe doing with SBAB funding, but potentially? Do we leave in the no need to consolidate or costly capital construction, or because you're going on something there as well, right?
Well, I brought this up, and I brought it up even in the three towns as well as online. I've had to answer questions about this, which is, you know, I mean, Kinsella has put out a capital plan of you know, like $90 to $100 million project, which I don't think the three towns could afford even with MSBA. And that you know, the idea is that if you send your high school students to Turner's, that, you know, you have a building that could be K through 8 at Pioneer. I mean, that would be less of a stretch because it's already divided into two sections. It would save you the future capital costs. And, you know, if they wanted to repurpose their elementary schools, they certainly could do that. But it leaves options. It leaves a lot more options.
I get that. What I'm
Yeah.
trying to get at, and I'm not asking it well, is Bill, from you.
Yes, the aspect of Hillcrest closing is probably an interesting one, because it's so different from what you're talking about previously about a town school, which is a singular item. This one, you're dealing with two elementary institutions that are a football field apart, and the town is the one that's closing it, not because they don't want to incur the capital costs of renovating the whole thing and adding on to it. They just want to add on to a bigger building. It's a town decision. It's not a district decision.
Oh,
These other ones are district decisions imposed on the towns.
perfect. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Okay.
Is that fair, Greg?
Yeah, no, I mean, that I was going to make the same point, is that, you know, you're not talking about, I mean, you know, it's much easier for a district and a town to close an elementary school. I mean, not politically, but because of the law. I mean, you only have one, you know, like regional high school that they all feed into. So you can't just, I mean, you can close it, but you're going to be having to tuition your kids somewhere else. And that's even a bigger political nightmare. So, you know, I think I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Bill.
Next.
Okay, yeah, we'll keep moving because I know I'm way over time. So I hit some of the areas that I know you will come up invariably in the questions. So again, these are transportation was one for sure. There was a question about class size. Some of these came out of your frequently asked questions area. How staffing would be impacted. You already said you're not going to save a lot of money, which most of your money, if any, typically the consolidation is in staffing savings. So you can think about these. I just tried to hit them very quickly without spending any more time than was necessary on transportation. You want to read the wording. You may not want to talk about the savings. I'm sorry, the facilities. But I think because you're going to have a counter proposal in Pioneer of $100 million project, I don't know why you wouldn't talk about that in in trying to say your proposal is better. But it's up to you all. All right, so I close with this sort of a key summary slide. I just kind of hit the highlights. This kind of sums up your value proposition to hopefully proposition is spelled right wherever it is. And again, equitable access, economies of scale, larger cohorts of students, modest savings, centralized staffing, blah, blah, blah. You can look through those. You can change them if you want. We have a looking ahead slide with 4 areas. I'll call this proposed, change that. Approval of your draft regional agreement, community outreach meetings, which you're going to be having in the fall. If you want to put dates in during this presentation, you can. Your town vote, whatever your target date is, if you have one, and then your transition planning. So a lot of people will want to know what happens if we vote yes, how long does it take, what needs to happen during that time period, when will my kid actually have to go to a different school? Those are the kinds of questions you're going to get. So I just sort of quickly said, you're going to have a couple fiscal years to do your planning. You may petition for another year, but these were sort of the next step slides. I didn't know, Alan, I mentioned to you when we were starting the meeting today, whether you want to put any details of the regional agreement in. I'll leave it up to you and Jay to talk through. And then we close basically by just talking to people about being proactive about change. And then ultimately saying you always have the option to continue to do things the way that you're doing them. What that's going to mean is fiscal pressure at the town level and a reduction in educational programs for your kids. And then we kind of close with an upbeat message around, it kind of sums it all up, more opportunities, repeats the graphic, and then just hits kind of the key benefits of your proposal. I have a slide in here for your, if you want to have an open session or a QA part of the presentation, but other than that, that's it. That's what you got. You have the script now, if you would like it to look through the script, or I'm not sure, Alan and Greg, how you want to handle comments or changes.
I mean, people could, how do you feel about them directly just making them to you and we can then talk about them? To try to save, I don't know.
They can, I mean, they can email it to me if you'd like.
Yeah.
And then I can, maybe go over them with Jake.
Sure,
Okay.
that'd be great. Yeah.
The other thing I was wondering is maybe that, because this is kind of long if we're doing a forum thing, I'm wondering if we had that Dropbox for people to put in their comments and questions, and then
Yep.
we get them later when we put the answers, the questions and the answers on the
Sure.
website.
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you do have a contact button, I think, on your website, because your website was designed by the same person who did ours. And so you could definitely use that as your Dropbox if you so choose to. So, but again, very open to streamlining some of this, changing the language, correcting any misspellings, particularly of Layden.
Jay, I would just like to comment. I love the flow.
Good.
I think your having gone through this really captures everything. And I think it's a very smooth flow.
Yeah.
I was trying to go back and forth between your presentation, your screen and the
Yeah.
one with the comments. I really appreciate the comments if I'm going to do this. But as Deborah was saying, actually, Alan and Greg, you received an invitation from Catherine DiMatteo, right?
Yeah, I put it on my calendar. I haven't
Okay.
responded to her yet, but I get to be the guinea
Okay.
pig. The first one's going to be in Gill in a few weeks, so it's September 15th.
What's
Okay.
that date? What's that date? Well, tell me after.
September
Yeah, I'll
30th.
tell everyone after. I'll
Oh,
make
so-
the comments.
okay,
I just
so-
wanted to tell, tell Jake, I really
Thank you.
appreciate this. I don't know if any of us, not to say that Alan and Greg haven't done a lot of work, but I'm not so sure if we could have put together such a great flow.
Oh, no.
This
No,
was
but
excellent.
I was adamant about hiring Jake.
Oh, yeah, well, it's far from perfect, and you also, I just want to, I'm not in your community, I've been involved to the level, and I think you have to feel like the message and the tone and what you want to get across comes across. It's really important. I interpret your materials and try to do that, but please, you are not, no one is hurting my feelings if they want to change things or shift things up. I did a dry run today and I recorded it. It took me 25 minutes. I wouldn't say I was reading slow and I wouldn't say I was reading super fast, but it was a pretty quick trip through. So it's 25 minutes start to finish right now, just reading the comments and clicking through the slides. The shorter version, I imagine you could get closer to 10 or 12 minutes if you could sort of trim it down to probably 20 slides or fewer.
Yeah, I would count on a half hour just because if we cut out some of the financial ones and then
Yeah.
people might ask questions as we're going. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a little give and take.
I do think as you're staging, and this is just general editorial from my vantage point, having gone all the way to the end with Southern Berkshire, is this is a great slide deck to sort of explain how you got to where you got to with the recommendation, what the rationale is. But people are going to be voting on a regional agreement, and I think you're going to have to detail that at some point. So whether that's a second round of presentations in which you sort of describe what's in there and what they're voting on, I think that you have to just think about, or whether you weave that in at some point to this presentation as you get further along. I just would definitely, I would anticipate that that's going to be something people are going to want to know more about. All right.
Do we need
Sorry.
to vote on this, Alan, as far as accepting it and with the suggested changes?
Yeah, and I think it'll be close enough that, any kind of cleaning up, we've got the gist of what would be presented. So I'm comfortable with doing that. Are people okay to move this part along? I'll take a vote. I see a couple thumbs up. All right, let's someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the slides. That
I'll second it.
by Jake.
All right, and moving along. Alan, Genevieve, yes. Karen,
Karen O'Neill, yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes,
Michelle,
Yes.
and Dorinda.
Yes, pending edits and local pictures.
Yeah. Greg,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
and Deb Loomer joined us. Great. So that has passed. I could not see, Jake, if they were numbered. Were there numbers on these slides, page numbers?
There are slide numbers. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All
Just-
right, so
Yeah. Just a reminder on the link that I sent out, the PDF. I have some hidden slides that you didn't see, but the hidden slides do show up on the PDF. They'll be eliminated. So anyways,
Okay.
you got to get on to Jay. So
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
thanks, Jake.
Yep. Okay.
all
Appreciate
right,
it.
nice job.
Well, have a
Yeah,
good
thank
night.
you.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Okay.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks so much. Okay, Jay, there he is. That was longer than we thought, but it was well worth it in terms of a really good job on putting together a presentation. So Jay and Mac, you've got the floor.
Yeah, okay. So, good evening, everybody. I'm going to ask Greg to pull up the clean copy of the proposed agreement. I want to make a few introductory comments here, okay? This document has not been approved by the Department of Education in a preliminary sense. It is a work in progress. It has not been proofread. Comments about word choice and punctuation and so forth are too early, okay?
Mhm.
From where I'm coming from is this to give you a progress report about where we are, okay? And we'll go through it section by section. I'd kind of like you to hold your comments to the end. I'll try to describe each one and what the drafts committee came up with. I do want to say at the outset that, this is not something that Mac and Steve and I wrote. This is something that the drafts committee wrote. And so just try to remember that as we go through it. So I'm going to do some of the talking on some of the sections, and Mac is going to do some others. Okay, now I've got something else here. We had the agreement. Now I got something else. Back to the document.
Sorry, yeah. I don't know what happened. It just kind of closed. So I'm gonna have to open it back up here. Okay.
There we go. Okay.
it?
So 6-town Regional Planning Board, proposed regional agreement, it's title page. We've got a table of contents that lists all the required components of a regional agreement. Jake had a slide on that, which I thought was helpful. I thought his whole presentation was excellent. And so we'll get into this. So section 1, I know you have the markup from the Department of Education. Those are notes that reflect the work that we're doing with them. We have at least one more meeting with them. This title page or this introductory paragraph is just to state in a legal sense that the proposed district is an agreement between the towns consistent with Mass General Law 71. This is a very standard introductory paragraph for regional agreements. Section 1 is the type of regional school districts. There are different kinds of regional school districts, so you have to define what you are. We looked at, the other thing I should say is when we looked at this, we did look at the Pioneer Agreement, we looked at the Hart Agreement, and of course we have experience with lots of others. This is always section 1, and you're a pre-K through 12, proposing to be a pre-K through 12 district with a district school committee. And the committee is authorized to establish and maintain vocational education if they choose to. So this is not intended to be in any way a competitive statement about Franklin Tech. It's just a common option that is included in regional agreements in the event that the district in the future might want to start a special program in whatever it might be, airplane maintenance or whatever. Okay. Section 2 is about the committee. And I believe Mac is going to talk about this.
Right. So the drafts committee spent a fair amount of time looking at the makeup of the school committee. And I thought I would just go through quickly there are 5 different acceptable ways that a school committee can be elected. The first one is that it's just according to the population of the towns. You just divide it up, and you get school committees members based on the population. That generally only works for two-member towns, or maybe even 3-member towns. But for 6-member towns, it's very unwieldy and doesn't really work very well. And a big obstacle to this is that Montague has more than 50% of the population of all of your 6 towns. So in several of these configurations, Montague would have the majority vote of every single vote. And we assumed, and the DRAS assumed, that was not going to be acceptable. So the first option then is we put aside. The second is having district-wide elections, but with no residency requirements. So everybody in all 6 towns would vote on the slate of offices, but it could mean that 1 or 2 towns would not have any members. So generally that is not considered a great option. So the third option is having district-wide elections, but with residency requirements. And as you see in the regional agreement, the number that we came to was having a school committee of 13 members. And you'll see the actual numbers there, and we can go through them if you want. But it requires people in all 6 towns to vote, but the regional agreement spells out how many people will be elected in each town. So let's say in Bernardston, they're getting 2 school committee members. So let's say there are 20 school committee members on the slate that all the people in all 6 towns vote for. The top 2 vote getters from Bernardston, for example, would be elected to Bernardston. So that it allows every community to get their fair share of school committee members. The next is having weighted votes, and a number of districts have gone to that in recent years that we have worked with. However, there are 2 issues here. In order for the smaller towns to get at least 1 full vote, the school committee would have to have 22 members. And so we assumed the draft assumed that probably was a little unwieldy. So and a second option then is to prorate those, but it would mean that smaller towns would get a fraction. They would get 1 person at the table, but that person would get a fraction of a vote, maybe a quarter of a vote. And as we've worked with other towns and other school committees, nobody wants to spend their time on a school committee and feel like they're getting a quarter of a vote for the time that they're giving to the committee. So having 22 members is too many, and doing it with 13 is not legal. There's no way to make that happen unless somebody gets a very small vote. Fifth possibility is appointing members, that some group or some board in town appoints the school committee. So again, the draft, after lots of discussion, picked number 3, which is the district-wide elections with residency requirements. So that means that every other November, all the towns would vote, and the school committee members would come from that vote. So that's basically number 2. Number 3 is about students, and so all of the resident students obviously would be going to district schools, and it allows the committee to accept tuition students. And the draft committee also wanted to make sure that the regional agreement honors the existing tuition agreements that you have with Irving and Vernon, Vermont. So that has been written into the document, so to make sure that the folks in those towns know that if you go this way, they will be included, continue to be included.
And Mac and Jay, I've mentioned this before, but you also have to include Warwick, because Warwick has tuition agreements, and you need to honor those.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ellen. Number 4, we'll go through a lot of it here. Basically, it means that the local towns, just as it is now, will own the elementary schools, and the district will own the middle school and the high school. So that is not a change for anybody. It just means which buildings are in the region, basically. Then there was a discussion about that any costs that exceed $20,000, and that's a change to, believe your 2 regional agreements right now. Any cost in an elementary school that's over $20,000 will be considered a capital expense, and it will be borne by the town for those schools. And one thing that I noticed in Jake's presentation, he had an asterisk next to Gill regarding, and it said K-5. And that was a lot of discussion, especially by Tupper Brown. And so the regional agreement does say that 6th grade students in Gill will be allowed to enter the middle school, the regional middle school, in 7th grade. Or I should say, students in Gill will be. So there's a provision to allow 6th graders to remain in their elementary school in Gill only.
Right, that's correct. I'll explain that to Jake.
Right. And then the rest of this, I guess there's been an agreement with Alan and Greg that talking about school closure, that will be for another time. Because that's been hotly debated, and we've been working on that. And we have some options, but I guess you'll consider that in a future time. So Jay, you want to take over on the
Yeah,
budget?
so section 5 lays out, again, this is a lot of common language here in this section in terms of other regional agreements. So it lays out the budget process. Section 6 gets into the apportionment of expenses, but section 5 is the process. So the district is under the requirements of 7116B, and so they have a public hearing. They have to have an obligation to prepare their budget. And it talks about the fact that the committee has to vote 2/3 to approve their budget when they've completed their work on it. And after that, the time frame for it to be sent to the member towns so that they have time to study it. So yeah, so the budget is adopted by a 2/3 vote. And it must be, and at the end, it has to be approved by 2/3 of the member towns, consistent with the requirements of the statutory method. So the way that, Gil Montague uses the statutory method, I believe so does Pioneer. The proposed agreement here also uses the statutory method. With any district that's more than 2 member towns, there's always a 2/3 standard for approving the budget. And each town's computer report, and then this is about an annual report that's being submitted, that's required to be submitted to the towns. You've seen those at your town meetings, and you would continue to see them at your town meetings. Section 5 is it's something that doesn't come up very often, but after there's been an approved budget, it just basically lays out the fact that if the budget is amended in any way, there's 2 options. One is that the amendment would actually impact the assessments for the towns. The assessments would change. And in that case, it has to go back to the towns and be voted. If, on the other hand, the amendment does not change the assessments to the member towns, it does not need to be voted. It can be, but it doesn't need to be. If it doesn't increase the total amount of the budget, reduces or leaves unchanged the assessment, the amendment shall not require the approval of the operating authorities. So section 6 lays out the statutory method. So there are 3 categories of costs: operating costs, capital costs, which includes debt and transportation. Okay. So in terms of the operating costs, it very clearly lays out how that's done. The formula is to take the operating budget, you take out Chapter 78, you take out the local contribution, other local and other general revenue, and that leaves you with the amount above the requirement that's passed on to the member towns. So the member towns are paying their local contribution, as they do now, and this is how the district would calculate the above required amount, much like it does now. So a lot of this doesn't change. And it lays out the apportionment relies on a ratio, and the ratio is basically each town's foundation enrollment in the numerator and the district's foundation enrollment in the denominator, and that ratio is applied to the costs, to the operating cost, and that's how it's divided by to the town. So smaller towns are going to pay less, towns are going to pay more because it's based on enrollment. So your concept is you're basically paying for the kids that you send to the district. Capital costs, we have to lay out the definition. Again, it mentions this $20,000 at the elementary schools. The district would pay for expenses below that amount, but for above that, it would go to the town. And they're assessed in the same way, in the sense that there is a ratio applied for each town, and it's based on enrollment again. And in this case, and I should have mentioned this at the outset, in the operating one, there's a rolling average here, a 5-year rolling average that's used to take out the year-to-year enrollment fluctuations and help member towns kind of deal with a more stable and predictable kind of situation. With a new district, that 5-year averaging would be cumulative. It would kick in first year, second year, third year. It wouldn't be 5 years right away, but it would get there. Transportation costs, again, assessed in the same manner. The town's foundation over the district foundation. Okay, and again, it's a rolling average. So that takes us to section 7, required component of an agreement. And this lays out how the district would borrow money for a capital project. So you're talking about significant expenses here. This is not about short-term borrowing that might be needed to meet payroll expenses during a year or something. This is about capital. So there are 2 ways to borrow money for regional school districts. One is section 16D and one is 16N. And the department requires you to identify a default method, the one that you're going to go to first. And so in this case, the default method is 16D. And what that means is that if the district, let's say the district wants to build, make up an example, they want to build a building, let's say it's for preschool and it's for all the towns. Then if to raise the money to do that, each town would have to vote on it and approve it. Okay. Section 16N also requires the towns to vote on this debt, to assuming the debt, but the election is district-wide. It's not town by town. Okay. And this can be very controversial. And so that's why the default method is the town by town vote. Section 8 is one sentence. Transportation to and from school is provided by the district for students enrolled K through 12. And then there is a provision for amendment. Mac, remind me if I'm stepping on your toes here, but
Well, that's fine. Go for it.
okay. So every agreement has to have a provision for how you change the document. And this lays out how to do that. So it can be a change can be initiated by signatures of registered voters in one of the towns, or it could be done by a majority vote of the school committee. Okay. And then the second section in this subsection in this part of the agreement lays out that the proposal for an amendment goes to the committee. The committee needs to send it to the Department of Education for review. And then it would go back out to the towns for a vote. Okay. With a majority vote, when a majority vote of the member towns by majority vote at special town meeting shall have approved the amendment will go to the commissioner for approval. So bottom line is, if you want to change the regional agreement, it has to be approved by a majority of the member towns, which in your case is 4. Okay. And then how how do you welcome a new town in? And it's basically the same thing. It's an amendment. You have to write an amendment to let a new town in. And in this case, it's actually the same. It says a majority vote in the other section. It says 2/3 vote here, but it's actually the same because you've got 6-member towns. And the other thing about this section is that the new town that joins, if they have any financial or obligations or fiscal obligations related to their school, that doesn't get transferred to the district. That they still have to carry those costs. And similarly, when they come into the district, they have to take part in the financial obligations of the new district. Okay.
Can I add something there, Jay?
Yeah, go ahead.
There is some language there, though. Let's say that your district just built a new high school or added on to the high school, or it made some big capital improvement. It's conceivable that if a new town wanted to get in, you could negotiate with them and say, you really need to assume some of the cost of this significant cost that we've just encumbered for our high school. So there's provision in there that you could negotiate with the incoming town to participate in something that they really didn't have anything to say about, but they're going to benefit from in the future.
Right. All additional costs will be articulated to the potential new member town, made clear to the voters, etc. Yeah. And again, this provision at the end that previous debt, OPEB, pension, and other liabilities of the new member town remain the sole responsibility of that town, not the district. And then how does a town leave the district? So this is section 11. And again, it happens through an amendment that starts in the same way that I spoke about earlier. And if somebody's going to leave, there needs to be a long-range plan submitted by that town.
The Red Sox game tonight.
The
Red Sox tonight.
The town seeking to withdraw shall cease to be a member town at the start of the next fiscal year. If the amendment, which allows for them to leave, is approved by a majority vote at the town meeting of the town seeking to withdraw and a majority vote at the annual special town meeting or another town meeting of the other member town. So again, 4 out of 6 need to say that this is a good idea for this town to leave, and then the commissioner has to approve it, and there are timelines to follow. It all has to be wrapped up by the previous December 31, so the department can do its data and financial planning for a different organization. And then this section on limitations is about the town that withdraws carries with them an obligation to pay for pension and OPEB liability of the district. So they don't just walk away from it. And there is a way to calculate how that happens, and they have to pay that in order to leave. The other important thing here is that, let's say they participated in this thing that I mentioned earlier about a district-wide preschool, and then they leave. Their participation in paying the debt on that preschool doesn't go away just because they left. Okay, so they remain a responsible party of any capital project that took place or was voted and approved while they were a member of the district. So that's about withdrawal, and that the money received by the district from the withdrawing town and its interests and its share of OPEB shall be deposited and used only for those purposes by the district in the future. Okay. So Mac, you want to take number 12 here, the review of the agreement?
There is a obligation for an ad hoc committee to be established every 10 years when the census comes out to look at the regional agreement, and that committee can look at it and say, we think it's still fine the way it is, or they can say, we would like the school committee to review this section or these sections, and they will write a report, give it to the school committee, and the school committee is not obligated to follow through on that, but in general, that obviously if they've appointed an ad hoc committee, you would hope that they would take it very seriously. When Jay was talking about amendments, whether it's the tiniest amendment to kind of to an extreme, if they wanted to change just one word in this regional agreement, it would have to go back to all the towns to reapprove and the commissioner to approve it. So, or it could be a major change, and again, that would be the same. So this ad hoc committee would make a recommendation, and the school committee would certainly consider it. So the
Okay,
last
so
section
Mac-
is on the transition period, and this.
Yeah, Matt, can I just jump in
Yeah.
quickly here?
Yes.
So I need to leave the meeting, and just a couple of comments before Mac walks everybody through the transition period. The school closure section and the transition period that Mac is going to walk you through are the two sections in the agreement that still need a bit more work. And I would ask you not to take the dates in the transition section as carved in stone at this point. So that still needs some review by the state. And so I'm going to sign off. Enjoyed seeing everybody tonight, and I will catch up with Mac about any feedback. Okay.
Okay,
All right,
so
thanks, Jay.
we can look at this as much detail as possible as we need to, but there are two major things that happen in this transition period. One is how a school committee gets elected, a transitional school committee, and then the final regional school committee. That's documented here. And the other thing that's kind of a unique concept is that during the time after the commissioner has signed off and said, okay, you can do this 6-town regional district, between then and when the final elections take place, there are actually 3 school committees that will be operating. Each of the Pioneer and the Gil-Montague school committees will continue to operate and deal with the day-to-day operations and the specific things that they're doing during that period. And then there will be first an appointed regional school committee that will only be looking at what happens after July 1st when the region actually becomes official. So these 3 school committees will be operating. I was part of that. I was a superintendent in Shirley, and there was a superintendent in Air, and we worked on through it became a 2-town region. And so for a year and a half, I was responsible for what happened in Shirley, and someone was responsible in Air, and there was a third person appointed from the Air staff actually, who became the acting superintendent for the region, for the new region. And so the 3 of us worked together at the same time. So that's the basic thing that happens during that time. So and then the other thing that clearly spells out how the school committees are appointed originally. The acting transitional school committee will be appointed by each of your current school committees. So they will look at, the agreement is there are going to be 13 school committee members, and we know the numbers from each town. And so the local school committees will appoint members from their own school committee in the same number. So Pioneer will appoint people for their towns to be on this school committee, and Gil-Montague will appoint people from their committee to be on this transition committee. And so they will, 3 committees will be acting simultaneously. And if in fact a election comes up during that time, people will be elected for a future school committee. They will still be considered a interim school committee. And then on the July 1st, when the region starts, those people who were elected as interim will become the permanent school committee. And the last thing it does in there is that it spells out how you can start a school committee and phase them in. So I'll go back to the Bernardston example. If they're going to have 2 school committee members, when there's an election for the first time, the person in Bernardston who has the highest number of votes will get a 4-year term, and the person who has the second highest votes will get a 2-year term. And then that 2-year term at the next biennial election will get a 4-year term. So there's a phase-in process that's all spelled out in this transition language. So I guess we're going to still talk a little more with Alan and Greg about this, but it's pretty well spelled out, and we've used this in other communities. So we know it works, but that doesn't mean it can't be tweaked to your benefit. The other thing, just before I give up, it's interesting that there are talks about votes in the communities as needing a majority vote, a 2/3 vote, and a 3/4 vote. In your case, that amounts to 4 towns, and all those 3 examples is the same number. It's kind of a unique thing with your six towns. So I guess I'm here to try to respond to any of your questions or concerns, and we can hammer them up at this time, or we can take them back under consideration, and I'll work with my colleagues and with Alan and Greg and see if we can come up with a language that meets what you're looking for.
All right, open up for questions, comments.
Dorinda has her hand up.
Okay, 'cause
My main question's just on timeline, like, is this something that we can share with towns yet, or is it too preliminary? Are there parts we can share? When do we know close to when we'll be able to share? I think people are very eager.
Well, it depends on when you all vote and if your towns vote to do this. If that should happen this fall, so the fall of 2025, the region would theoretically start on July 1st of 2027. So basically a year and a half. And so whatever you vote, it'll probably take somewhere between a year to a year and a half before you get to the right July 1st.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
we're looking at a November election, and I'm wondering, are we on track for this document to get voted on in November?
Oh, I guess that's an Alan Gregg question.
Well, that's where we're at, and this is
Sorry.
really important. This is why, we had this review here. I was hoping we would be able to approve the sections that were, that Desi looked at. I have the marked up copy.
Got it.
And,
Okay.
we would approve that, those, and then we're only left with a couple clarification, the transition process, and really the school choice, closing school language. To me, those are the only 2 outstanding issues. The rest of it seemed to have some pretty good feedback from Desi, unless there's more. So the towns, we need that window to be able to get it to the towns and hear their feedback. And then do whatever with the planning board, and then I would have the planning board then vote the final document. And then that's what would be going to town. So we really need this. We need this in the next couple of weeks. We've got to have this something to share with the towns.
Right. So you sent us the document, and so those changes in yellow, those were the only changes, because most of those seemed pretty minor.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had a document that really it just had simple things like district wide and red line things that are out, which they went over. And so, this would have made it, this, I mean, you're in a place that after this review, other than those two outstanding things, this, to me, this is going to be the regional agreement. If Desi has some other things that we haven't nailed down that I'm not aware of, then we could address just those. But we do have to move this along, Matt, pretty quick. Towns are waiting.
Right.
So even if we were still working on two sections, I really would like to be able to say, here's the regional agreement. There's two outstanding issues we're working on, but they would have the, 95% or 90% of the document.
Now let's, Pat has her hand up. Pat?
This probably is nothing, but I want to ask it anyhow. Under the agreement review every 10 years, we don't have any timeline of how long this is supposed to be. I have seen committees sit on something and far too long and nothing ever happened. I would love to see it, if maybe a year and a half or a year to work on this. But it's a little open-ended. I wish I had the page number, but I don't.
Well, it's on page 19 and
Okay.
the way they worded it was that it should continue to serve the best interests of the member towns. The committee shall, at
Right.
least at the 10-year intervals, establish an ad hoc committee,
Yeah.
to work on this. So that would be 10 years
Right.
from the date. that
Yeah, and
this
every
is-
10 years, but there isn't a timeline of when that starts and when it is presented to the committee or to the towns.
Oh, you're saying from when they appoint it, the ad hoc committee
Yeah,
could be working
yeah,
for like
yeah.
3 years or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Durations.
that,
So it
that
could be,
just concerns me a little.
yeah, so Mac, that could go in there where it says the committee shall give any such ad hoc study groups report due consideration. So just before that, it could give them a time frame of, a 2-year.
Okay, or what about above that on the fourth line, composed of knowledgeable persons to study this agreement and report within
Yeah, that's a
months
perfect
to
place.
the committee?
Okay.
Within
it
2
just-
years of its,
yeah.
being appointed.
What do you think is a reasonable time? 6 months? 9 months?
No,
I would say 9 months. I
Yeah,
just know how unless people have a time limit, it's easy not to do it in a
Mhm.
timely manner.
Okay, we'll add that.
that
If-
okay with folks? That's fine with me.
But yeah, what's other people think?
I agree with Pat.
I agree with Pat as well too, because otherwise you might bridge an election and then the composition of the review team could change.
Yeah,
That's right.
I agree with Pat as well. I think 9 months is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, fine with me.
Because it's just a review. It's not
Mhm.
changing a bunch of stuff, right?
Right.
yeah,
It is in that, it says that they would give, the school committee would give their recommendation, due consideration. So out of that could be, amendment. So now we get an amendment process of this section should be amended, or this section needs clarification. So they're gonna review and make a recommendation, and then the committee would take it under advisement.
Okay.
Yeah, but that might only
I-
be 1 or 2 sections. So 9
Yeah.
months is good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think. The other statement I have, and it's not a question, it's just me being a Northfielder who went to Pioneer. So what decision was made that Gil Montague would have a deciding vote? And I know the answer, but I had to ask it. because that's where my heart is. Only.
Wait, say that again?
I was wondering why Gil Montague has the deciding vote on the makeup of the school committee. And I'm only saying it, I know the answer, but I'm only saying it because I am a staunch supporter of Pioneer.
Oh, what do you mean by the deciding vote?
Well, there's 13 school committee members,
Yeah,
and
they have
six
five.
of them are from,
I
It's
believe
five.
it's five. It's
There's
five.
five.
Five from Montague.
I
Well, two
know.
from Gil, but that's, you can't think of it in terms of, there's no districts anymore. There's no separate districts. It's not Gil Montague anymore. It's just 6 towns.
I know that, but that's not what we're going to be hearing from the towns that we are talking to. I've heard it around Northfield.
But we'll need to explain that because
So,
we're not,
okay.
Gil does not necessarily see eye to eye with the way Montague,
Okay, all right, but people need to know that.
Yeah, and just like
and we need to make
Berniston doesn't see eye to eye with Northfield on things.
sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. Oh,
Yeah.
no, of course, sometimes, but not all the time. What I'm saying.
So
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
necessarily a deciding vote.
yeah, and I think that, Pat, that what we're trying to get away from is it's not a
I know.
Northville and a Berniston and a Light,
Yep,
and yes,
yep.
they have 5 votes, but the committee members represent all of the kids in all of the towns, and
Mhm.
that's how they should be casting their vote, and what town they're from should be not that.
You know,
not-
but really, Alan, think about it. I think that we are Yankees who are having a hard time giving up our individual schools I'm sure it's the same thing that our forefathers, my mom was on the committee that formed Pioneer. And I can remember her talking about, oh, this is a pain. But we need to come up with some really good things to say about this question, because I've heard it around Northfield so many times is, oh, we're not going to have I don't remember what they called it, but they didn't want to give everything up to Gil Montague. I mean, they stated lots of things that I just didn't talk back because I didn't know the answers that would sound wrong. So think about what and school us a little bit on what we can say when those questions arise.
Okay.
Because they will.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Matt, any other questions or comments? And thank you for that, Pat. I like that you're right up front. You say what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Mac to bring back? Mac, if you would push along the urgency, I think Jay gets it, but just let him know you've heard it from other members, others than Greg and I, that we really got to get something if we're going to move this. The townspeople, we got to get this on our website. We've got to get it in the select board's hands, and we need to do that really, really quickly. So,
So we have drafted something in both of those cases, and should we try to meet with you and Greg at some point to go over that? What's the best way of doing that?
well, I think we're working on the school closure. We've had like 3 renditions of that. And I don't know, I didn't know anything about the, until you mentioned the transition. So, do you,
Yeah, I don't-
can you send me your phone number, Matt? Cause I'm working on the long range plan. And if you could, give it to me in an email, I want to talk to you because you've been through it. And I have to have a section in the long range plan about the anticipated expenses that we need to fund various positions and things that have to happen in the transition year.
Okay,
And so they're asking for that. I don't think they asked for that before. And you would be a good resource for me to talk with.
okay.
So if everyone's all set with Mac, we can finish up our agenda.
I was just gonna say, Alan, I was surprised when Jay said about the transition. I thought that was pretty well settled. It's
I
just,
did too.
we have come up with 3 different variations of the school closing that we'd like some preliminary discussion about. So if we could do that relatively soon, that would be good.
Well, we have been doing that. We had Steve, the other day, 2 days ago, Steve, we had, Matt from Abrams was really good to be part of that conversation. Jay, Greg, and I, and we basically looked at what you had, and so we're still working on it. I guess that's all I can say. We're trying to find something that could work and be fair to all. And so we recently brought Matt in because whatever language we would come up with, we wanted him to do a stress test to actually use numbers and see what that would look like. So that we're gonna have a meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock again to
Okay.
continue that.
Okay, very good. Thank you all.
All right, well, thank you.
Good luck.
And,
Good night.
all right, good night.
Thank you.
Ellen, I've got to leave here. If you're going to have a vote, could you do it? And I suggest that you said to keep our Tuesday evenings open, which I have,
Yeah.
that you close the meeting soon.
Okay. Yes. So I guess the biggest thing, let's just to touch on this is I will see what I can do to honor that. I knew this was gonna be a longer one just because we had 2 outstanding things that we need to move along. The other things that we have up in the air should not take that long. Dorinda, in terms of you're
Well, I
trying
have to go.
Okay. No, I don't think there are any votes necessary.
I thought we were gonna vote. Did we go for all of that? Except for the parts that still need work. Do we agree with that?
I think I'm gonna hold off on that, so you're okay
Okay.
to go.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Dorinda, we were looking at a Saturday to see if, in Montague's is kind of like the different from all of us, and probably you're starting there to see what could work for them, and then we ask the other towns. Do you have any update on trying to get a Saturday in November?
Yeah, Walter Ramsey, the town administrator, sent an email to the addresses that we had for the town
Yeah.
admins in the other towns yesterday.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yep.
I saw
I
it.
received it and I replied.
Yeah, we're good
And-
with either the 8th or the 15th, I think it is. And
Yeah.
oh, no
Yep,
kidding.
November 8th or 15th, so we'll find out soon.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Thank you, Dorinda. Oh,
Mhm.
nice. The 8th to the, great. Okay, that's.
Okay, I have
thank you.
Alan,
Yes,
the 8th of November is 2 church fairs in Northfield, which might impede people attending,
Yeah.
depending if it was middle of the day or evening or what, but if it's middle of the day, it would make a difference on those, the
yeah,
Catholic Church and the Trinitarian Church.
You can reach
Okay,
out to your town admin and let them know that if it's a concern.
Yeah,
And like
they-
prioritize the 15th.
Yeah, they know that,
Yeah.
so.
okay.
Great.
And then, yeah, maybe it ends up being the 15th. Thank you. Let me just make sure we get this. The other thing is we would like members to start reaching out to your the folks to get like the town hall to have a presentation. Michelle, did I hear you came up with a date?
Yes, and you should have gotten an invitation, September 30th.
Okay, so Leiden, September 30th. Gill is September 15th, so that's right around the corner. I am meeting with the Women's Guild, but that's not until October. I've got to get something going. Anyone else? Can we, if you, as soon as you make contact and you find a time that we could do a presentation, I want to try to open my calendar up to be available for as many of those as possible if he would like me to be there. And just send me that information that, you know, the Board of Selectmen or whoever, you know, you're gonna reserve town hall for a presentation on whatever the date is. And then I'll mark it down. Try to move mountains so that I can be there.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been sending out or spreading the word that anyone from any resident from the 6 towns can come to any of these meetings. So people
Yeah.
are aware of the Gill public forum already.
And Dorinda, I was able to get your flyer that you made up for the Warwick newsletter or town letter. And it was really, really well received in terms of the feedback that I got, that colorful, to the point, and
Yeah.
really nice. So
Yeah,
I don't know if
Deb,
others were able to get it in. Michelle, you get it in as well, right, in your newsletter?
I hope so. It hasn't come out yet.
and Deb
I
Potee
sent it.
Deb Potee has put in the chat that before she left, I will land on 2 dates in September and October for meeting in Northfield. I will do one on an evening and one on a Saturday morning, probably in the meeting room of our town library.
Okay. And okay, so I think, is there any other business so we can bring this to a close that is urgent at the moment?
Guess
Our
I'm
next meeting is when is it? Oh, here we go.
in like 2 weeks.
So I have down this September 9th. And Matt was asking me, you know, he was trying to get a date, and I told him that I thought it was in the second week in September. So to give him a time frame, I'm hoping, or I think he will have the assessments done to share at a meeting. And I think that's probably the last biggest one that we need to hear and to understand. And then after that, it should be just feedback from the attorney of what the OPEB obligation is, and you know, what the language is for the legislators and that kind of thing.
Alan?
So, yes,
I got a quick, so just a update or whatever. I mentioned that I would try to be working
Yeah.
on the athletic side of it, because it is going to be a critical question for both towns, I think, both districts. And so I reached out to the athletic director at Turners Falls and the athletic director at Pioneer. They couldn't meet, they couldn't Zoom. I gave them a list of questions about enrollments, participants, co-op teams, all that sort of stuff. The Turners Falls AD got back to me right away. I have yet to hear from the Pioneer. I sent out a reminder and said, hey, you know, I'd really like to have some questions answered. Still hadn't heard back from them. I also called the MIAA, which is the state association that would have a lot of the answers to some of the questions. Unfortunately, even though I know them well, due to the public harassing them and wanting to have answers to questions, the only way that I can get the questions answered is if an athletic director asks the question. I've asked the Turners Falls person if she would approach the liaison person to ask questions such as, you know, girls on boys team, boys on girls teams, co-op teams, guests, hosts. I mean, it was just a whole slew of questions and possibilities that could happen. The Turners Falls AD had an interesting comment, and she said she wasn't quite sure if, when combining the both high schools, if you would even have enough to field 2 team middle school students. And so that's when I said, you know, that's why I asked for the numbers. Like, how many middle school kids do you have on your JV? How many middle school kids do you have on your, you know, that sort of stuff. So I'm still working on that piece. And that was really just for, you know, that's going to be a question. I mean, there's no doubt. And so I'm trying to get more definitive answers rather than, oh, we don't know.
And so that's, like I said, I mentioned that I was going to try to do that. And so I am in the process of trying to do that.
Deb, if you're in the, I don't know if districts have their programs, archived on the website or just someplace, but it would be interesting if you were able to find out, let's say 10 years ago, or even 8 years ago, what were the sports programs available in both schools? And then we can
I
see
don't
what
think
they
that
are
that-
now. And
It's
then,
never in the program of studies, Alan.
no, not program of study, they're athletic handbook. There's got to be somewhere that told what they have for sports. It'd be interesting to know, what did they used to have? Greg, you're on mute. What they used to have and what they have now.
Well, and
Because
we
then
may
we could
not be able to get that, but Deb,
Yeah.
could you repeat what you said, that the athletic director wasn't certain about what? Because it broke up when you,
Oh, so the athletic director wasn't certain. She said, and I don't know if it was you who said something about a football team, and the athletic director said she wasn't quite sure even if the schools were combined at the high school level, that there would be enough athletes to field a JV and varsity team without having middle school students on it.
well, I mean,
That's how,
I would look to Frontier, who has 400 high school students. They have varsity football, they have JV football, they even have freshman football. So,
you're talking Frontier, which is where all
only
the athletes went, Greg. That's where all
I
the
know,
athletes
but
went.
again,
Uh-huh.
I understand that, but my point is, you have a critical mass of students that could potentially build into those athletics. I mean, are you going to have them right away? No, but are you going to have enough? You can't say there isn't enough to field the teams. It's a question of interest, because those and the way the districts are now, a lot of a lot of students that are interested in sports do go to Frontier. That could change.
Right,
That's the
but I asked for the hard numbers. So in other words, I wanted the hard numbers. So if someone says how many, I can say in the varsity, I don't know, in the varsity volleyball team last year, there were 2 seniors, 2 juniors, 1
Yeah.
sophomore, 1 freshman, and 4 8th graders.
right.
So
But here's the thing, Pioneer didn't have a football team last year. So, who knows how many might be interested in playing on a football team, but that it's not offered. So
right,
the athletic director is not going to know that. My point is that middle school is going to be well over 400. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see them having any difficulty fielding middle school teams.
right,
High
right.
school, maybe they wouldn't be able to have a JV team. I think that's unlikely with 315, 320 students, depending on what the interest is. But I mean, they definitely could field the varsity. I mean, if they have the interest. Again, it comes down to interest.
Okay, we're gonna wrap
Right.
this up.
Yeah.
Deb, can
So
you,
I just wanted to let you know that I was trying to get numbers.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
thank you. And
That's
Deb,
tough, though. That's a tough one, Deb.
Deb, let's end this meeting, but I'd like to have a conversation with you, because you also were looking at staples and looking at flyers and expenses, and I want to follow up with you on that. So I'll give you a call.
That's the other Deb.
Yeah, so I'll give you a call on that. All
All right.
Thanks,
right,
Deb.
so thank you for hanging in there. This is our longest meeting. And,
Motion to adjourn.
yeah, please.
I'll second it.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, all right.
Bye.
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 Aye,
Aye.
roll
All
call
right.
vote. It was unanimous.